Go right into the Climate Reality Project. It was founded by Al Gore after his first movie, An Inconvenient Truth, came out. If you haven't seen the sequel that came out 10 years later, it's really good too. And this program I'm about to present is from a 500 slide deck that Al Gore has offered me and all these other people, and we narrow it down to about 100. I've added slides that are from the state climatologist or photos I took in Herman of flooding. You'll see different things, and then you'll see some slides that have a green background. Those are ones I've created to keep current because this is a constantly changing, complex subject. But we do have solutions at hand. Some of them are in this book that I'm going to be referencing, and Scenic Regional has 3 copies within the 7 or 8 library system. So we have this beautiful Earth, this photo taken by NASA, actually an Apollo mission. And this is the way it looks now, and for 10,000 years it's been very favorable to human agriculture and the development of the societies that we have now. And it's all within a thin layer of atmosphere. That thin blue line is where all this is taking place. But some of the sun's radiation is getting trapped by CO2 and other pollutants that come from burning fossil fuels. So the Earth has gotten warmer, man-made global warming pollution into this thin shell of our atmosphere. It's happening because of all these different things that we do. And you know, I don't want to be without air transportation or land transportation, including my little Prius that gets 55 miles to the gallon. Industry is good. Agriculture is good. Landfills are a good way to take care of things. But we don't want a lot of forest fires. We need to manage our forest better. And what's happening in the Amazon today is extra aggravating, because they just want to have more land to raise cattle, which is the most intensive food for protein that we have. It's the coal plants that I'm going to pick on, and I won't stop. It's the dirtiest of the fossil fuels. For 10 years, the US actually was putting out less carbon dioxide because for 10 years, we were converting a lot of coal plants to natural gas. Okay. That's good. But what's happening right now, trying to open up coal mining near national parks and forests, and it's just, none of it makes any sense to me. By the way, this is a non-political program. So it's the burning of fossil fuels, and it started actually even further back in the late 1700s. Coal was coming into usage, and much of this period here is coal. It was wonderful. The steamboats that helped get these communities along the river established here in Missouri. But look what happens in the 1950s. 2-car families, lots of vehicles, and a lot of population growth. Successful communities, successful nations, the third world nations, had more cars and more things that consumed power. And this is a huge amount of energy every single day rising into our atmosphere. And the name James Hansen down here, he's the guy who spoke to Congress in 1988 and warned that if we don't reduce our carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere, we will have more severe climate catastrophes. And he has been proven right. So this is what's happened worldwide. This is the standard curve, and then this is what's happened. It's changed to where an area we didn't even used to have, here these extreme heat events, have moved from the 1950 to 1980 baseline. Here's what's been happening leading up to 2015, and as you'll see, 2016, 17, and 18, and now 19 are all proving hotter than previous years on record. And the North Pole is affected. This one really has me concerned. When you're 50 degrees hotter than normal in late February, something's happening. And I can tell you what is happening. The jet stream is changing. It's taking heat up to the North Pole, and sometimes it's that heat going up there bounces severe cold down here, like you experienced last January, late January, and early February in Missouri. I happened to be in Minnesota, where my son had moved. The 1 week we chose to get up there, it was 27 below with a 20-mile-an-hour wind chill, and I walked the dog briefly. So yes, it's been getting hotter. Thankfully, we've had a nice summer, though. And the ocean absorbs more of this heat than anything. It's 70% of our planet, and the global ocean temperatures have gotten warmer, and this is what's causing more severe weather events, from whether it's a hurricane or a typhoon. And this is an example in 2017, Hurricane Harvey blasted through the Gulf of Mexico. Temperatures of the ocean were 7 degrees hotter, almost 600 feet deep. And when it hit the Houston area, it kind of stalled. So an area near Houston received, yes, almost 5.5 feet of rain. And stuff's happening in other parts of the world too. And these folks in Bangladesh, unlike the people in Houston, probably didn't have insurance. So this is very disruptive to lives and economies. 700,000 homes damaged or destroyed. Hurricane Irma. We have these storms that have been hanging out longer, including the one that got stuck on the Abaco Island of the Bahamas just the other 2 weeks ago. Again, it's a 1 or 2 day story, but to the people in the Florida Keys, one of whom I knew, this was a terrible experience. All this is 2017 right here. We had back-to-back 3 storms in a row, if you recall. Puerto Rico took 11 months to get their electricity restored in the remote regions of Puerto Rico. So in those 18 hours, the people of Puerto Rico are thinking, Category 1 storm coming. I've dealt with that before. Well, it changed so quickly that they got blasted and weren't as prepared as they might have been. Hurricane Sandy, the first storm I ever heard called a superstorm. You can see as it's hitting the East Coast, and if you recall, the coast of New Jersey was very hard hit, but also water came into lower Manhattan. And New York City is very at risk to rising sea levels, king tides, and storms. That's one of the financial centers of the world. These bigger storms are being recorded all over the place. They're rain bombs is the term being used. If it's not a dust storm, Phoenix has had these rain bombs. And here's a place in Argentina, almost 5 feet of hail in 15 minutes.
That's all hail?
That was hail. And it's, yeah, this is kind of now a slushy hail, but apparently wherever they had a measurement, that was a 4'9". Just like we get reports in St. Louis, they might have had a ½ inch of rain when we got 7 in parts of this region, 4 at my house. So this is from their climatologists in the state of Missouri. We're getting these bigger rainfall events, 3 inches or greater. And here you've got over 100 years of history, and look what's been happening since the 1990s. this is flash floods. And not only have we seen plenty, other parts of the country, such as the town in Maryland that was between two creeks, businesses got flooded twice in 12 months. I mean, I saw pictures of it too. Water flowing through the stores, not inches, 3 feet of water cascading through downtown business stores. So what had been good for 100 years may not be high enough ground anymore. In my own hometown of Herman, Highway 119 go right through the main part of town. Okay, this was a picture from 2017. It happened again in 19, and it happened in 15. So we've got less than 5 years of 3 times closing a major highway. Our mayor has been trying to get this tiny little bridge replaced and built higher. Not good for business when your town floods. And again, it wasn't the whole town flooded, it's just parts of it. And this coffee shop has moved from this location. So I always mentioned that when I graduated college, here was the average amount of rainfall, 39 inches. Precipitation, this includes snow. Look at the last 5 decades. And I just measured my own 2018 was right around this number. So far, as of September 1st of this year, we have had 7 inches more rain than last year, which was average of 43, no longer 39. It's good for farmers if it doesn't all come at once, like these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 inch rainfalls.
It isn't good for farmers.
Is anybody in farming here? Great. I've got a whole, I was on KOPN radio and had a presentation just focused on farming and the effects. But as you know, a big rainfall can wash away not only the topsoil, very number one important, but the fertilizer or seed that might have just gone down. So this goes from 1895 to the current year, and what's happened is we're getting these big rains, extreme precipitation, and this doesn't even count what happened in August right in our own backyards here. So they're happening more frequently, and they're not as big as 93, but if you look at, you know, it took decades between these, and now we're getting them more frequently. Spring comes a week earlier, and fall begins a week later. And I had noticed this, in fact, as a gardener, became aware that we were no longer in that zone, they call it, zone 5. They created zone 5.5 for right here in mid-Missouri. So precipitation bombs that we saw in some previous slides, they're part of this atmospheric river that can just be, you can see it from space, a lot of moisture coming all at once, and gets to land, and it does something like a landslide in the middle of the night on muddy hills that once had been forests. So it's a combination of disasters. Meanwhile, other parts of the world not getting enough water. Yeah, South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa, is over 4 million people, and they were almost out of water. They were within a month of running out of water, and good for them, they started getting more rain. But it gives you an idea. What do you do next? It's not a small town like Flint, Michigan, which is a big town and still using bottled water. Okay, we got to protect what we've got. So here's a graph of the red is extreme temperature droughts, fires, blue mudslides and floods and storms. And once again, we're getting this higher, things happening more in recent years. Sorry, we want to go backwards. Okay. So once again, we've got the increase here happening in recent decades. These are every 5 years. Now, 2017 set a record for worldwide cost of disasters. In 2018, with Paradise, beat that, and 2019 is on the same path of, once again, we're going to have more worldwide disasters. Now think about what $320 billion of damage, that dollar amount, how many solar arrays, how many wind fields, and yet our legislature in the state of Missouri blocked the Grain Belt Express, which was going to go across northern Missouri and take wind energy from Kansas east, including Herman. We were going to get $1 million a year for 10 years and have renewable energy as one of our sources. Blocked, hopefully not tanked. $16 billion was the Paradise, California area, loss area. But it's not just in the United States that we, of course, hear so much about. It's happening all over the world. All these different fires were taking place in Russia 3 years ago at the same time. And then there were food shortages. And if you recall, I think it was in the 80s that we were sending grain to Russia. Now, the refugee crisis isn't just going to be limited to people who get their homes flooded. It's already happening. A lot of the Syrian refugees had their water cut off. The Jordan River was in control of the government that said, well, those people are against us, so we're going to just cut the water off. So here we are, the luckiest country in the world, working hard to provide so much food product that goes from here over to these countries in the world that aren't able to be food dependent. I mean, they are food dependent, they're not independent. So we've been having great years. We've had great scientific successes. South Africa, mostly Brazil, gets some really good years, and they're burning the Amazon to try to get more. Australia's in the 6th year of drought. They're not producing so well anymore. This chart is from 2012, so Australia is probably not very much there or a lot smaller. But the rest of the world, they need food production. And eventually, if wars come, it's going to be coming for this reason. However, with our own heat, any local farmer will tell you that when the temperature hits 85 degrees, corn production stalls. So you get too many hot days, you don't get as good a harvest, and that's why a lot of the corn planting and predictions are that it's going to be more successful to the north. Wine growers in California are planning, because they have to be 5 years ahead to get their crops in. They are looking at going further north. And of course, when you've got higher temperature, you have more risk of diseases like this to the crops. And agriculture is so important to water usage. It's by far the biggest. And this is actually a small number compared to California, where 85% of their water is going to agriculture. A huge industry, a huge place for us here to get our produce in the winter. So Californians are really fighting for water. A lot of wineries were sold for the water rights. And we've got our own problems here in the Midwest. 20 years ago, we had depleted 50% of the Ogallala Aquifer, which is under parts of Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, because of all this irrigation. So it's predicted that by 2040, all this irrigation is going to be less likely to happen. In the rest of the world, we're seeing things like this, where the rainforest is falling to palm oil or cattle ranching. And Brazil is leading the way right now. 2019 is going to be the worst year on record for forest loss. So this is from the CDC. It's a slide I just put in because as I spoke to the nurses, I realized this is important to everybody. So I'm going to leave it up here a minute. You can see all the impacts of climate change on human health. I want to point out mental health impacts that's already being felt. Children, I don't encourage children 10 or under to be in these presentations because there shouldn't be any trauma in their lives before, but children are aware of what's going on, and a friend of mine's a psychologist and said their children are concerned. Oh shoot, one more back. Mosquito vector. I have Lyme disease. Not bad. Within 48 hours I was being treated with doxycycline, but I only had 4 tick bites this year. So we've got a lot of tick-borne illnesses and mosquito-borne illnesses, including all these others that I hope none of us ever get. But these are the risks, the health risk of climate change. Doctors, nurses were saying, oh yeah, asthma especially is much increased. An allergist came to one of my presentations in St. Louis at a religious organization and said, you don't have to wait. It's happening right now. Every allergist he knows is busier than ever. So all of these things are part of what the climate change is doing. And air pollution kills 9 million people every year. It's not as bad in this country because we had an EPA. It was very strong, and clean water and clean air were part of the Nixon administration. Great. And we have to protect what we've got. But this is adaptation right there. You know, humans will evolve, but is this what the future for our children will look like? I hope not. This is in one of the 8 leading coal-burning cities in the world, which are all in India. Look what happens. Coal's the wrong way to go. So, ragweed, 320% increase by 2100, but like the doctor said, it's already happening now. Heat events, more deaths not only in the US but worldwide. And there were some new record temperatures in Iraq and India this past summer, this summer, where the low temperature was 109 degrees. The low, record-breaking low temperatures. During the day, they had a very unpleasant 126. So, as the Pope said, the poor are most affected. And the Pope has strongly said, we need to do something about this. So here's where we see how big the ocean is and how it has been absorbing most of this heat that we're trapping with our pollution in the air. Coral bleaching, this was another bad year, and so was 2018. We may lose the most beautiful reef on Earth, but it's also happening off the coast of Florida. It's happening in the Gulf of Mexico. Coral is bleaching out. Vertebrates, big decline, almost 50%. Same with land-based species. Same with insects. And the fact that the Arctic's warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet is great concern about the amount of methane being released. So here is what it looked like in 1984. see if I got this. There's what it's looking like now. So what's happened is, I'll just give you a reference point. Here's Alaska. So China is building the largest ship ever built. It's not going to go through the Panama Canal because it won't fit. They're coming up this way to take the new Northwest Passage that has opened up. And it's been open for parts of the last 5 winters, and each winter there's less ice. But thawing permafrost, who knows what's under the permafrost that in our recorded human history we've not battled whatever diseases might be there. Who knows what will affect humans. But just the air alone is going to have a bad time with all the methane being released. Notice that Miami and New York, Newark are the largest at risk by asset value. I think this is $1 trillion here, yes, $2 trillion up there. All the rest of these are in the Far East, but you know, you've got some major financial centers, Hong Kong and Tokyo, Shanghai. And this is a picture from Miami. This would be when it was sunny all day and the king tide's coming in. So they're walking in water on the streets of Miami. Coastal flooding just in our country, huge. Now think of all the money we could spend on renewables to cut down on fossil fuel, continue to be extracted from the ground. That's where the real savings will come in. Because once the world realizes, and there is some notice of this happening right now, does anybody notice that even though the stock market's been going up, the oil industry's prices have been gone down, the energy sector has lost more year to date. It's the worst performer year to date of any. And you might have noticed that the Saudi Arabian oil giant Aramco, pretty much owned by the government, they're going to put an IPO out. You can buy in. Don't. Here's why. All those assets in the ground, all those oil assets in the ground worldwide, imagine a basketball. Here's what we've extracted so far, about the size of a grapefruit. If we extract the rest of it, all the ice melts. Oceans could rise 22 feet. We're already dealing with a foot or 2 feet during storms, 3 feet coming in. We don't want to see it happen. That's why the largest oil company in the world, Aramco, one of 8 barrels shipped worldwide, is going to be up for sale. So we suckers could buy into it. On that list there, bottom of the first column says consider divesting from fossil fuels. I did it a year and a half ago. The more I study climate, I just want to recommend it to everybody else. It's not a good investment. All right, this is the end of my depressing part of my presentation. The cost of carbon, we've already talked about just about all of these, but it's the #1 threat to the global economy. This is huge, and interesting that the cash register is in the center here, because a lot of this is happening because of greed. All these negative things are part of the greed of the oil companies. The whole fossil fuel industry, I'm going to include coal as well, because they can only see their profits from quarter to quarter, from year to year. They're not seeing this amount of damage that is happening worldwide, and the cost of it being borne by the insurance companies, which means it's being borne by the rest of us. It needs to change, and we can do it, because we have the solutions at hand, including just last year about this time, the first hydrogen-powered train. I don't know how it works, but this is good news. We're basically taking something water-based and moving train, and this one's in operation every day. Planting trees. Now, this is a big deal, especially as the Amazon's burning. We need more trees because we've cut down so many, and I'm not saying we should never cut trees because we do need some of the paper products, although because we're not recycling enough, but we could. Trees can solve a third of the carbon problem. Now we're talking about drawdown, drawing down the carbon in the atmosphere. And this book has over 100 solutions to make that happen. It's not going to be a silver bullet or some great new invention that has it happen. We need all the different things that can make it happen, which we're going to be talking about here, but planting trees, as simple as it is, and this isn't even the biggest deal ever, 647,000 trees in the Philippines, 3.2 million in an hour. They got the Guinness Book of World Records on that. In my own yard, I'm growing big tall grasses. You see them all over landscapes. This particular version of the tall grass gets up to 14 feet tall, and that's the equivalent of 18 tons of coal or 12,000 liters of oil. So this is happening right now in Missouri, at the University of Missouri. It's won all sorts of awards for reducing their carbon footprint to produce electricity 40%. They're burning a lot of the wood pulp that's waste from our sawmills in our state. Meanwhile, and I hope it's not just greenwashing, Exxon experimenting with algae. I saw a TV commercial. If it works, great. But wind and solar are so developed that they are now half the cost of new coal plants going in, which shouldn't happen anymore, period, and they're not going to happen once the insurance companies have pulled the plug. So in Missouri, they said, well, you know, some farmers would have to lose some of their land. Look at the footprint. They're not losing much, and they're going to get revenue. So why did Missouri legislators stop it? Now, I, of course, wrote to my legislators. And if you want to get on something called ResistBot, B-O-T, ResistBot, it's an app where your local senators, House of Reps, state senator, not only the state, but the United States government senators, your county commissioner, you can just have them all on one bot, and you type in your message, and it goes to all of them. They've made it really simple. I recommend it. Because they say, if you're, most people aren't writing to or calling their legislators because it's a lot of trouble. Make it easy. The internet makes it easy. So wind energy capacity's gone up. It's really soared, and prices came down so far that this one in Texas is giving away free electricity at night. Throw on an extra blanket, cool your house down, and you leave in the morning for school and work. You'll come home to a cooler house during the heat of the day when most homes that aren't doing those things are going to be getting higher electric bills. So capitalism is wonderful, and being able to save money is everybody's goal, and these are ways to do it with renewables. Pretty powerful, 40 times over. Solar is even better. So I put this slide together last year, and it's already a little out of date because 2018 and so far in 2019, this graph is still going up like this. We're somewhere just under 20% now of worldwide getting energy from renewables. Geothermal, does everybody know what that is? Because I've had it in my home for 9 years. Saved $200 a month, $22,000. Paid for itself. Solar installations also on that curve like a hockey stick straight up and still going strong. I was trained in Mexico City by Al Gore and another Nobel laureate. The second guy was Dr. Mario Molina, who is the guy who figured out what was causing the hole in the ozone, which is closing and may be closed entirely by 2030. And that was freon refrigeration gases that were going up and affecting, grabbing to oxygen or carbon. Somehow it was creating that hole. So we're making progress, and he won a Nobel Prize for that. And I'm real proud of the US for powering up over 11 million homes. Even businesses are getting into it. And worldwide, fossil fuels are no longer getting the majority of investment. In fact, it's declining. So this is in the US. Notice we're about 50% solar and wind. Coal is barely a fraction. But in Europe, they've embraced it even more. Much, much more. So coal use has gone down, and we hope to keep it there. In fact, there's even a coal mining museum. Oh, and look at their roof. They're doing it because they're going to save $8,000 to $10,000 a year. Now, this is in Mitch McConnell's own home state. Coal is no longer king. Worldwide, they're skipping all the transmission lines and central power and such. Well, because whoever paid for this, or perhaps the whole village did it, just a small solar system. Now that's enough to power a cooking device, a light bulb at least, and a computer. Because the computers, they're everywhere. And these are little fold-up solar panels. So solar capacity went up in the US. This total right here is enough for 11 million homes. That was last year. But we're being left behind by China. Mm-hmm. China, as a controlled economy, said solar is going to be big. We're going to make it big. And there's over 100 manufacturers of solar panels in China. And look at the size of this thing, and look at the type of ground it's on. Desert. Well, we got a lot of desert in the United States, and Mexico has even more. So we don't want to build that wall too high, because we're going to need solar energy in space to capture it. And the Pope made sure this happened. California is the leading state, and Los Angeles, where my son lives, just introduced a program that is revolutionary as far as big cities go, and they are heavily investing in solar. Remember wind? It was 40 times a year, through a year, 40 times more than wind for wind generation of electricity. This is every hour. Tesla built the world's largest battery in Australia. I heard it paid for itself in the first year. And just today I read that Elon Musk of Tesla says they are working on a battery where your vehicle could go 1 million miles. Let's hope. By the way, the first Tesla has appeared in Herman. Are there any in the New Haven, Washington area? Does anybody know? The owner of the Ford dealership likes to say it's his wife's car. Well, he sold the Ford dealership after being a loyal Ford man for years. Lithium-ion battery prices. Okay. I've been using them for 25 years. I apologize, something dropped off the slide here. Let's see if it comes up on the next one. Sorry, it didn't. For 25 years ago, I bought a Black & Decker lawnmower, battery powered. Lithium battery, I don't know how big, but I only had to replace the battery once, 25 years. I use those little batteries for weed whipping and blowing and all sorts of things. They're lasting wonderfully. So, we're proud of California, leading the country in electric vehicle sales. They're up to 350,000. New York has about 50,000, so this is really a leading state for it. 350,000. But worldwide, oh my goodness, there's 5 million electric cars on the road. And this actually is through 2018. Where are they all? Mostly in China. They have over 100 manufacturers in China, not just of solar panels, but of electric vehicles. And the jobs are there too. Over 10 million people worldwide in renewable energy. Solar energy jobs growing 6-fold faster than the rest of the economy. In Missouri, STEM jobs, science, technology, engineering, and math are growing twice as fast as all other jobs in our own state. Solar installer is now the fastest growing job, followed by wind, and should be for the next decade or so. We don't want to see seawall building becoming the fastest growing job. We can get this under control. We need to do it sooner than later. We've already waited too long. 5 times as many jobs in solar than coal mining. So when I'm the guy who bought the $38 LED light bulb. Yeah, this is light bulbs. In 2016, they were $8. Now you can buy 4 for $8 in 2019 at the local hardware stores. 60-watt bulbs. Oh, and they now look just like the light bulbs we grew up with. And estimated yearly energy cost, only $1.20. Wow. Just the other day, in fact, this empty box is because I removed all the CFLs, the ones with the swirly and a lot of mercury in them. I'm going to give them to somebody who's needing, is low on money. So the incandescent bulbs we grew up with cost this much per year in energy. CFLs cost this much per year in energy. Way down by my ankles, that's what it costs to burn LED. 10% of the cost of the incandescent bulbs we grew up with. Well, I have this bag. I hear it came from Trader Joe's. This bag is biodegradable, and it reduces road traffic. A single truck carrying 2 million of these bags is equal to 14 trucks full of paper bags. 14 trucks. Cleaner, biodegrades. Thank any vendors you see these generic bags from. So we are proud that in St. Louis, they have committed to 50% renewable by 2035. This is their Board of Aldermen 2 years ago. And 100% by, I think the year is 2070. But some places have already done it. Rockport, Missouri, has anybody gone north of Kansas City and seen the windmill that is letting this community be the first in Missouri to be 100% renewable energy? Greenburg, Kansas was hit by that terrible tornado. They rebuilt with renewables. Aspen, Georgetown, Texas, Columbia, Maryland, Vermont, Burlington. I mean, this is great. And also, great news was the 2015 Paris Agreement. It really did work. Well, it really had possibilities of working great. The island of Kobata and somewhere off near Fiji also, islands were there saying, we got to keep it to 1.5 centigrade growth, not 2.0, 2.0 centigrade is equal to 3.8 Fahrenheit. So it came out at 1.5 as a goal, and a lot of the countries of the world, including Germany, who's really into this, said, sorry, it's a few years later, we don't think we're going to be able to do 1.5. It looks like 2 centigrade, 3.8, is likely to be the number we can achieve. Not good for those islands, those low-lying islands, but the good news right here is in 2015, when Obama was president and the current president wasn't but one of many candidates, they wrote this in that you cannot legally withdraw. So we're still in. We're just not trying to meet even 2.0. It's an embarrassment. Sorry, I'm getting political. Can't help myself. But many companies have committed to 100% renewable. Some of it's greenwashing. I hope a lot of it's true. A lot of these are companies you'll recognize the names of, leaders in their industries, leaders in the world in many cases. So if the government is not going to try hard, these companies are. And they've made agreements to purchase clean energy, which is why more clean energy gets built. Ameren is building 2 solar fields to go with the 2 they've already built. And they say by the end of next year, 10% of their energy will come from these 2, which are larger than the first 2. And I love to show this to students, $20 million competition to figure out how to draw down carbon and put it into building materials or something else. Recycle of trees, paper of all kinds. I hope the library has such a program. Good. Look at all the savings at the bottom there. And you could be involved with Citizens Climate Lobby. I joined a year ago. I haven't done anything, but I am. It encouraged me to write to my congresspeople, to do some resist-bot things, to go to St. Louis on Friday and participate in the climate strike. I'm retired. I wouldn't encourage any student to not be at school. A worker should be at work, but I can put my body out there and say, this is important. Please, please, let's not keep business as usual, or it won't be the world as we know it that we're leaving to our children and grandchildren. So a friend I had dinner with said, well, he's got a lot of trees on his property, so he's lowered his carbon footprint probably. I don't know, 30 tons a year? That's the average US citizen. That's a lot. So we all try to reduce, reuse, recycle. And we've added refuse to that. Like refuse that straw being offered with your water or soda at a beverage at a restaurant. It's the little things that add up, and it's the little things that keep it in your mind every day to try to lower your carbon footprint. It's the only Earth we've got. It's quite beautiful. And I hope I've shown tonight that the solutions are there. We, voters, people of interest in the climate, need to show, not just in our own everyday actions, but to get more active. I encourage your advocacy of this message, because I can't do it alone, and the 20,000 of us out there doing these presentations to 5 or 40 people at a time won't be able to do it all. On that list is a lot of things you can do to speak out at the top of the second column. Write to your editors, legislators, let your librarian know you'd like more, that you'd like to get a copy of this book, Drawdown, so you could be more informed about some of the things I've talked about tonight. On this list, we've already discussed socially responsible investing. Green burial options. I've learned that typical funeral, like my 104-year-old uncle's last Friday, again, we're this much carbon usage for the typical casket and funeral this much for cremation, and green burial, way down there. Every county in the state of Missouri allows green burial. You just have to register where it's going to be, such as in my garden, wherever you want to choose. You cannot use state forest or national parks or any public lands.
So you could do it in your backyard if you wanted to?
You can. You just need to register. There's mushroom shrouds, simple sheet burial. I mean, it's low impact. So actually, that was my last slide. And I really do want to thank you all for being here tonight. And it's such an important message. Can take any questions, or I'll stay later if somebody wants to talk privately. Yes?